Hi RIT Baja designers, this is the beginner's tutorial video for WPDM or Workgroup Product Data Management. It's the software we use in SolidWorks to back up all of our models and CAD related files. If you haven't installed SolidWorks or set up PDM, I'll be making a second video that goes over the download and installation, setting up the data folders, turning on PDM, and setting up all the template files. Once you have that all set up and you open SolidWorks, the first thing you need to do to get into PDM is go to the drop-down arrow on Options, click Add-ins, and then turn on PDM both as an active add-in and also as a startup add-in, which just means that it'll always start up with SolidWorks. Once you do that, you'll get a File Explorer on the right side pane. First, you'll have to log in. The screen for logging in just looks like this. There's users for every type of designer, so you'll log into the respective designer user. The password for them is mostly the same. You can find out either from a lead designer or from myself what that password is. Once you log in, you can see your vault and you can also see all of the files that we have in it. The first thing you want to set up, if it's not automatically set up, is where your local files will go. So you want to right click on Workgroup PDM options, click on folders, and then make sure that it's using the folder C/Baja Data/Scratch or some other folder. Fundamentally, what PDM does is it's a server at the school which backs up all of our CAD documents. Not only does it back it up, but it also backs up every version that you make as you update different revisions of it. It also prevents overwriting work by different people. So what that means is only one person or one user can be allowed to own a document in any given time and make changes to it. For everyone else, all they can do is open a read-only version. While you have ownership of a file and you're working on it, you'll actually be working on a local copy of that document. So I'll show you what I mean, for example, by opening up R16's input shaft assembly. You'll notice that R16, R14, and R17 and a few of the other folders are black while some of them are orange. Orange folders are folders that you don't have any read-write access to, regardless of who owns the folders or owns the documents. Those documents are ones that we've locked so that they can't be changed anymore. If I go to R16, I've got access to driveline. I'll go to reduction top level. It's all broken down by the hierarchy. You can see that R16 input shaft assembly shows up in the description here. That's because I was careful when I made the file to actually add a description to it. If you don't see a description, you're not sure what it is, you can right click on the file and click preview window, and then this preview window will update to show you what the document you're clicking over looks like, which can help you save time from opening the wrong file. If I go ahead and right click and open checkout document, this is how I open the document from the server and then consequently make changes to it. It gives me two fundamental options, which are to get the local copy and also take ownership. Get local copy just downloads it from the server. If I unclick get local copy, I can't actually do anything in this, so it's kind of a silly option to be able to click. The second one is whether I take ownership of it or not. When I take ownership of a document, it means that the only person who can upload a new version of this assembly or a part, whichever it is the driveline owner or whoever you're logged in as at the time. This is reflected in the tree or the folder of all the files by these pink check marks here. If I were to right click on the input shaft assembly and click release ownership, I disown it and that assembly actually goes to pink. If someone else had it, like reduction or frame, that would show up as a blue arrow. So if I open and check out a document that I don't currently have ownership of, it shows up exactly as if I didn't. I hit take ownership, and then you'll also see over here revision B-3. So that's the latest version of the file, and it's going to save in that Scratch folder that I set previously. If I hit open/checkout, it notices that I've already opened this in the past and I've got a local version. I'm going to hit yes, which means it overwrites my local version with a version from the server. You almost always want to do this to make sure that you're editing the most recent version that's been uploaded. So hit yes to that, and then it'll open up the file, including all the individual ones. Alright, so now you can see the assembly before me. The change I want to make in this case is to add a piece of hardware to the assembly. Because I have ownership, you can see that this is not a read-only version. I can save it. And so if I want to add a piece of hardware, let's say I want to add something to this quarter 20 hole here, because I know that we're actually going to have that installed and it's not reflected in the driveline assembly. I can go to McMaster, for example, socket head cap screws, alloy steel, pick quarter 20. Let's say I want a 1-inch quarter 20. McMaster has CAD for all of their documents. I know that's something a lot of folks use. I'm going to download it to my local list into Baja and Scratch, and then open that. There's a couple things you generally want to do when you download fasteners like this. This is unrelated to PDM, but it's always good to suppress the cut sweep and suppress the smaller aspects of it. Why do we suppress that? Well, it simplifies the document, which lets all the assemblies load much more quickly, especially the iterative assembly. And it also doesn't take away anything from the information that you have. Once I've done that, I like to use a standard naming convention so that the document shows up more clearly when I'm doing something with it. For example, I'll put socket head cap screw, comma, 1 quarter 20, I will say by 1 inch, alloy steel, McMaster car, and then the part number. You also always want to add a description. There's a couple ways to do that. I can add a description here when I do a save as. If I've already saved it, you can also click on File Properties and add a description here. That's very important. There's a couple ways I can check this in. I'll show you several of them. First, I can always hit File, Save and Check in. Currently, this is only locally on my computer. It's never been put into PDM. When I do this, it gives me the option to check it in, which means to do a new revision to PDM. I can either retain or release ownership. What that means is after I check it in, will I still be the only person who can make changes to it? I'm going to release ownership because I don't really care about making changes to a piece of hardware. Then I can choose the project. The default project typically is something you don't actually want. Right now it's body panels for the 11 and 12 car. Usually what you'll end up doing is checking it into your specific section. So since I'm working with R16 reduction, normally I would pick that. For hardware, I like to do something different. I put all my hardware in a common folder under hardware, and then in this case I would put it under socket head cap screw. I'm not actually going to check it in right now. There's a couple other features we'll go over when we check in the assembly. So I'm going to cancel. A quicker way to do the check-in is actually to go into the File Explorer, right-click on a folder, and then click Check-in Active Document. This will do the same exact thing, except because you've right-clicked on that folder, it'll automatically pick the project, which helps save you some time. The third way I can do it, since I'm working in assembly, is I can insert the component into the assembly. I'm going to float it so I can move it around, create some mates, okay, so I have that in. Now it's still not in PDM yet. If I do a save and check-in on the assembly, it tells me it needs to be saved, the assembly that is, that's fine. Now it's going to query the info, and what that means is it checks all the files that I've been working in and determines what I've changed and what I haven't. So you'll notice that in this check-in page, the input shaft, the left bearing, the spacers, none of those show up as needing to be checked in because I haven't actually changed anything about that. On the other hand, you'll notice that the socket head cap screw does show up as needing to be checked in. It'll automatically pick the project that's being used for the assembly I'm in, but I can also change that project in here just like before to the socket head cap screw folder. One other note is that when we downloaded the input shaft, assembly, it was revision B3. Now that is revision B4. It's automatically revved that revision. This is a new version of the input shaft assembly. A couple other ways I could do this revision is to just add a plus, which designates that it's only an incremental change, or C1, which would be a significant change. The reason I'm on B4 in this document is because once the shaft was actually manufactured and assembled with the specific size spacers, I made a new revision called B, which was just to say B1 revision is the revision that is actually in the reduction box for future use. I'll talk about ways to open up past revisions and edit past revisions in the advanced PDM tutorial video. Additionally, I'll talk about drawings and simulation files. So if I've made a drawing for this document, I can click on Find and Include Associated Drawings and click Find Now and add those as well. But we'll talk about that in more detail then. If I go ahead and check in, it notifies me that I'm checking one new document and tells me what folders I'm going to check those in at just as a final check. If I go ahead and hit yes, it sends those documents to PDM. Now we'll be able to find that document if we go to Common, Hardware, Bolts, Socket Head Cap Screws. You can see the McMaster holochrome in there. Let's say, now that I've already got that bolt in there, let's say I'm working in this input shaft assembly. This input shaft assembly is currently being owned by me. The way I know that, I can go into reduction like I was previously and check that it's being owned by me with the pink arrow, but I can also go to document information, which will show me who the current owner is if I'm not sure. So the owner is Driveline and the most recent revision is B04. It's perfectly fine, and actually I would highly suggest doing multiple uploads on a day when you're doing a lot of work in the CAD. You'll never regret having added an additional revision. You'll only regret when you didn't do a revision. So this time, I've already got the bolt in there. Let's say this is a totally different assembly. I've already added the bolt in the past, which is the nice part about having this common folder, and I want to add it again. A really cool feature I can do is I can just grab the file from the File Explorer on PDM and just drag it and drop it into the assembly I currently have. I'll then mate that in the assembly. Now that's good to go. We'll do a save and check in again. It's telling me once again that it needs to be saved, which is fine. Querying the info. Once it's finished querying, you'll notice that it doesn't actually tell me to check in that flathead cap screw because I've already checked that in before. One final really important thing to do whenever you make a change on your assembly or parts with a new revision is to click under this note panel and make a note of what change you do. And then apply it. Like we talked about before in the advanced tutorial, I'll be going over how to open up those historical versions, and having notes makes it very easy to figure out which version you are at any given time and simplifies the process. It also lets us revert back to a previous version. So this has been the beginners using of PDM tutorial. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me, and then also please reference the PDM advanced tutorial. And then once again, if you haven't used SolidWorks and you haven't installed SolidWorks before, check out the installing SolidWorks and setting up PDM video that I will be creating shortly. Thanks, guys.